Hello and welcome back to the Pretty Smart Business Podcast. I am your host, Sheena White, and I'm so glad you're here for this very special conversation. So today we have Scotti Moser, and she is a transformational coach who helps women break free from the toxic effects of narcissistic parenting. With a compassionate approach, she empowers women to rediscover their authentic selves, rebuild confidence, and reignite their passion for life. Through emotional healing, boundary setting, and resilience training, Scotti provides the tools to her clients to live with peace, power, and purpose. I'm super excited and welcome Scotti Moser. Okay, now we can hear you, I think. Awesome. So glad that you are here. So tell me, what is your kind of journey to starting to help women with dealing with their narcissistic parenting?
Like many of your listeners, my story is not that unique. I was a box checker and I didn't realize that I had toxic parents for decades into my 40s. So my journey actually started with being perfect and trying harder. And that really helped me survive as a kid. I was never going to be completely safe in that environment, but it definitely helped. So that was my go-to. And it really works up to a point. I checked the boxes of grades and extracurricular activities through college, then through law school, and then through my job at a prestigious law firm. And then after a couple years, I knew the corporate life wasn't for me. So with a partner, I started my own law firm, still a box checker, and that business went pretty well too. It wasn't until my mid 30s when I still felt this overwhelming anxiety, when I still was so insecure, when I was struggling with self-doubt. I was constantly worried about financial survival, and every day felt like life or death in my nervous system. And it occurred to me one day as I was just struggling to cope with this anxiety and do my checklist. And I realized that life wasn't fun. And I had been, it was the opposite of fun. And
Yeah.
that for my whole life, I had been telling myself that I was going to outgrow it, that once I did X, Y, and Z, then I wouldn't feel this way anymore. And it occurred to me that I wasn't going to outgrow it and that I might have to take some proactive steps to really figure this out. And that's what I started doing. And I wanted to eat, pray, love. I don't know if you're familiar with that book.
Yeah, I'm old enough that
Okay.
I'm older than
Yeah.
I look. Trust me, I know Eat, Pray, Love.
I wanted to Julia Roberts my way out of this situation. I wanted to go to Italy and Bali and figure it out in a glamorous manner. But at that time, I had an 18-month-old and I was pregnant and I was the breadwinner for our family. And that wasn't going to happen. So I had to commit to taking my journey on the inside. And that's what I did. And it was rough around the edges. It looked like, taking courses and listening to videos while the baby slept on my shoulder and really doing a lot of unconventional learning methods to educate myself. And eventually I started coaching other women, professional women in that felt similar ways. I made headway with them. Closes part one of my journey. So I'm a coach. It's great. That wasn't the end of it for me. I was helping people, but it felt like we were chopping off branches, that we would clear something and it would pop up over here somewhere else. And I just had this feeling that I wasn't getting to the root of the problem. I had all these tools and they were working up to a point, but there was so much left undone. And then one day I was scrolling through YouTube and I came across a video and it was called Setting Boundaries with Difficult People. And I watched that video and I don't remember the entirety of what she said, but I do remember she was talking about the concept of narcissism and narcissistic abuse. And that was an aha moment for me. There's a certain segment of people that have actually been identified as really difficult to deal with. And I just knew, like, you feel that resonance in your bones. I just knew that this would be part of my explanation. And I I researched, I put myself through my second law school, and all of the pieces fell together. This was the root that was driving it. And this was the structure that was defining all of that negativity in my life. For my whole entire life, I had felt like I was standing on quicksand. And it was, if you're standing on
Yeah.
quicksand, you're going to be anxious and scared and overwhelmed. And I realized that I wasn't crazy. I didn't make that up. That was the emotional environment that I grew up in. I got that key component. It all made sense. I was able to create Soul Money, my signature program, and we were able to get the quantum leaps and the transformation that my clients and I really deserved and that we were longing for.
I love it. I love it. So, how can someone even start to recognize that maybe this could be the root of what they're dealing with?
That's such a good question because there's so much denial. Most of these family systems are denial dominated. To this day, my parents will say, "No, you didn't. No, we aren't. You're crazy. You're making all of this up." They'll say, "That never happened." Those things that you
Mhm.
remember, yeah, that never happened. You just have to start to look back and get to the root because what we're anxious about is rarely ever the real reason. So you start to trace it back, and there's a process for doing that, but you start to recognize that all of these things come from being gaslit, come from being around entitled people, and really educate yourself about narcissism and watch the videos, read the books. There's lots of resources, and you'll feel that vibration in your bones. It will feel like truth to you. Maybe it's not what you experienced, and you'll know it right away, I feel. But when you start to look into a description of a toxic or emotionally immature, abusive, narcissistic, all the words they use, when you start to look into it and when they start to describe the need for control, the entitlement, the selfishness, the need to be superior, you will know if that is what you experienced as you start to look into it. You will really resonate. It will feel familiar and it will feel like relief.
Yeah. And if you don't take control and fix this root cause, what are some things that, some ways that this, like your narcissistic parenting from before, can affect your daily life?
Okay, I'm going to go. There's many, but I'm going to go over. I would like to get to three of them today. The three
Hmm.
that I feel are the most crippling. And the first is an unconscious belief. I call them vows because they're so deeply held in our system. An unconscious belief to take care of everyone else and never have a need myself. And that's also known as people pleasing. And that really helped us to survive. In fact, we had to do it that way because that toxic person has to be the nucleus, the center of the world. And for a kid who can't survive by themselves, they have to do whatever it takes to be in that parent's world in some capacity. So they will sacrifice their authenticity and their needs and their desires. It's not even a choice, it's not conscious at all. It's easy. Death over here by myself in parental rejection, or life over here serving and pleasing this parent. And so we choose the pleasing, and it's an ingrained habit, and it feels like life or death in our systems. And I work with professional women on how to set boundaries. And this is why it's a process and it's not something that happens overnight because we've had decades of life or
Hmm.
death conditioning. If you set this boundary, you're dead. Things are not going to go well for you. You're much better just sucking it up and doing the extra stuff. And that's all running unconsciously in our system.
I
So that
like it. Yeah. That's deep right there.
Yeah, it is deep. We think we should just be able to say no and we keep taking on more. Why
Mhm.
isn't it happening? You really have to understand that still all of those events are still alive in your nervous system. Your nervous system job is to keep you alive. It's not going to say, "Okay, this time I'm going to relax." No, this time I'm going to be on high alert, and it's safer to take 300 cupcakes to the PTA or whatever than to say no, because that feels really scary. That means abandonment, that means rejection. Someone's not happy with you, then you're on in the death spiral. That's how your nervous system is viewing it.
Yeah. What does Brene Brown say? She says discomfort over resentment. And
Yes.
she has a little ring that she turns, and she says that she'll say it to herself over and over: discomfort versus, discomfort over resentment, like trying to like prep herself to have those
Yes.
uncomfortable conversations. Because you mentioned the 300 cupcakes, and it made me think of a story of her cookies. But, anyways, and she'll say that like you have to have those uncomfortable conversations and set the boundaries, or at the other side of it, you'll end up really resenting that. And it's not necessarily the other person's fault, right? Like it's not the PTA's fault that you said yes to the 300 cupcakes. But you'll resent them. You're like, oh, I had to do this. And so then we get in this like push pull of giving so much and feeling like no one is seeing us, but then and resenting them for it, but they didn't even know.
Right. And that resentment will build up in your system. And if you can't say no, your body will eventually start to do it for you. In my opinion, that's why so many women struggle with autoimmune and exhaustion related health concerns because, that discomfort is just too much to bear. And we need all of our tools to really get us into a new pattern.
Okay. So you said you had three. So we got to one. Now I want to know number two. I can't wait.
Number two is I vow to be invisible. And this comes from a childhood of unsafety where it wasn't safe to have if you're in a toxic family system, you have to believe what they believe, you have to think how they think, you have to be seen and not heard, you have to act in a certain way, you have to hit your marks. And a lot of times it's safer just to disappear into the wallpaper. I know in my life, my sister and I heard the tires crunching on the gravel driveway. We were gone from the common areas. It was way safer to be away from it than to be in the midst of it where anything could happen at any moment. And a lot of us experience getting raged at for having a bigger energy, for being bold and being sassy, especially as little girls. That wasn't acceptable.
Disrespectful.
Yes. And plus, it really annoyed, if they're carrying their own stuff, big and noisy and lots of messy kid stuff really triggered them. And they came down with a sledgehammer. And so that we carry that. There's no switch that we can flip when we turn 18 that lets our nervous system know that, okay, we're safe now. Now you can talk at meetings and you can have an opinion and you can have a voice and you can really carry that big, bold energy. That doesn't happen. And so at work, it looks like holding ourselves back and not speaking up. If we are business owners, it looks like a refusal to market ourselves. And it doesn't show up as, I'm scared of being rejected, so I'm not going to market ourselves. The conscious mind steps in to say, I'm too busy, that's not right with me, to come up with the myriad excuses, right? To come up with reasons why we don't do it. But underneath all of that is usually terror of rejection and attack and it's not unfounded terror. It's real and it has a grounded basis in reality. We have a lot of history to back that up. And so it can really hold women back in their marketing and in corporate and holding their value and their worth and making a contribution.
Yeah. Yeah. I have many stories that I can't share on this podcast around this sort of stuff. We'll have to talk offline. Sorry, everyone watching. You don't get to hear those. Okay, so what is number three?
Number three is I vow to be perfect. And
Okay.
perfectionism, as I mentioned in my intro, it serves us so well until it doesn't. It gets us to the grays and it provides a measure of safety. The problem is that imperfection, even the smallest flaw, causes this searing shame attack. And you mentioned Brene Brown, and she talks about the searing physical reactions of the shame attack in our system. And what shame does is it causes us to want to die inside and we just want to hide. And you can't show up as your present, authentic self if you are experiencing that kind of debilitating emotion. And the fact is, if you're a perfectionist, you're not going to be perfect all of the time. So you're setting yourself up in a lose situation. No human is perfect, not even you. And if you're not perfect, you're going to experience all of the shame. Voila, you're setting yourself up I know there were times in my life that I experienced almost daily shame attacks from imperfection. And also, perfectionism is exhausting. You're pushing and pushing to achieve this unattainable goal. And perhaps the most financially debilitating way that it sets women back is being completely honest. Perfectionists make great secretaries and poor bosses. You know, you want that person in that supporting role. But if you're going to take a leadership role, you have to be comfortable delegating and accepting the imperfections, the flaws that person is going to bring to the table, and seeing the big picture and still holding that powerful energy that it's going to be okay and you're still going to do a great job as a team. And perfectionists really struggle to hold that energy, and often they just don't. And it's a total buzzkill, and they stay in that supportive role.
Yeah. Back to Brene, because she's my best friend. She just doesn't know it yet. And she talks about how perfectionism is also like very like catching to our children, especially our daughters. And as someone who has a daughter, I can start to see it. And I'm like trying so hard to work through my own perfectionist tendencies so that I can help her to not have that go into her life.
Absolutely. I think underneath the driving force underneath of perfectionism is this is what I have to do to get love. And so our daughters absorb that. Wow, mom has to do all these things and she has to do them just right to get love. When really the message we want to be sending is I'm a human, I'm worthy of love. And children feel us. They don't necessarily listen to what we're saying. They're feeling what we're putting out there. And yeah, absolutely. I agree that perfectionism is catching.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all of Brené's books. So, what are some of the first steps a woman can take to heal from this? So, if we have this perfectionism, we know we're giving it to our kids, we have these things happening, it's crippling us. Like, how do we even start to change the story?
Okay. I have a 5-step process, is how I like to lay it out. The first 2 steps are interchangeable, but what I put into step 1 is absolutely crucial. And it's something that a lot of people and programs don't mention. And that's the mind body connection. As I've mentioned, all of this energy, all of this emotion is trapped in our bodies. So we can't think our way out of a physical thing. You can't think your way better than this. Your mind can do some backflips, but your body's going to say, I'm not doing backflips. I'm 45 years old or 35 years old or whatever you are. Your nervous system's not going to. So we have to use our tools. People have discovered tools throughout the ages to connect that mind and body and to really provide that physical, visceral body release from this nervous system. In my program, I use emotional freedom technique or tapping to relieve our physical system of that emotional burden. That's not the only way. There's lots of breath work classes that does a lot of the same things, some yoga, even journaling. People can experience that physical relief of getting it out on the paper. But in my opinion, that is the number one most crucial step that we need to take, is to figure out the root of the problem and get it out, clear it from our bodies, because that event, that time frame, all of those untruths are still stuck in our system and they're making us vibrate all wacky, and it's really debilitating. And if you know it, you can feel it. So that's definitely what I consider the primary step number 1.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a good book about that called The Body Keeps Score.
Yes, love it, read it.
Yeah, I read a lot.
Yes.
Let's talk about 12 more books. Okay, how can women start to rebuild their confidence after narcissistic parenting?
Definitely the step 1 that I
Mhm.
mentioned is freeing that all of those stone walls that are in our nervous system that are knocking our feet out from under, but also understanding narcissism and emotionally immature parents, whatever name you want to give it, really educating yourself. And this is where the mind comes in, because the mind hasn't usually been our friend up to this point. But if we educate it, it can become our friend. And to understand what happened to us, there's so much freedom in that. And as you educate yourself about how this type of people behaves and how they act and what's driving them, you start to realize it actually wasn't me, it was them. Because you've been told it was you, you're fundamentally flawed, you're delusional, you're crazy, your whole life. And you had no choice really but to believe it. That's not your fault. But you need to create that mental distance between the reality that they gave you and what actually happened. And so seeing them as removed and that as not the final say in your life because they had this thing, the sickness, whatever word name you want to give it, they had this thing and it's not your thing. And you can, not every experience that you create for yourself has to be like that because it feels like we're stuck in a loop. I'm going to go there, I'm going to fall flat on my face. So once you can learn that it's not them, that they had this thing that made them unsafe, and a lot of people don't have it, you can choose to surround yourself with healthier types of people, and that will cultivate and grow your confidence.
Yeah. I always say that I have like sadness for a narcissist because they truly deeply are flawed themselves and they have their own shame and stuff like that. So it's like you can't really get mad at them. Like they don't know the difference. Like they don't know, they don't recognize what they're doing and like the kind of venom that they're spewing into the world.
That's true. And that helps as long as we don't cross into toxic compassion. I know me, I had to learn all my lessons hard knocks. So I was like, okay, they're so hurting and I can make this better. I lived in this fantasy land. It's important to realize that yes, they have their stuff, but it's not your job to fix it. And it's probably impossible for you to fix. And you have to get your needs met somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. Do not become yeah, toxic trying to fix them. I just mean having your own compassion and saying, look, it's not like they hate me or something like that. It
Yeah,
wasn't a
it's not.
conscious
Yeah,
decision to do this.
it's not personal. That's how they are.
Exactly. Okay, so what is a last little bit of advice you can give to those who are ready to start breaking free?
Be the person you needed back then.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really important to reparent yourself. And for me, it's encapsulated in that be the person I needed. Did I
Mhm.
need more criticism and more judgment and self to berate myself? Is that what I really need right now? Like you have to be that person that you needed. And that requires a lot of healing and a lot of openness and giving yourself gifts that nobody has probably ever given you before. So I really encourage people to take that step.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend once who said that you should treat yourself like you would treat your best friend, and talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. So if you wouldn't say that to your best friend, like why would you say that to yourself? You need to be your own best friend.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that will change a lot of things if you're not living in that self-imposed area of unsupport and turmoil. That will have a bigger effect than you can imagine. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just really being like if you're going to be overly compassionate with someone, being overly compassionate with you.
Yes.
Not the others, with yourself.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay, I love it. Where can people connect with you if they are ready and they're like, okay, step one was so great. I need all the other four steps too.
Check out my website. It's scottimoser.com, and Scotti is just with an I, scottimoser.com. And I have a free gift for people there, from overwhelmed to on fire. And I chose to start with overwhelm, helping people clear that because that's what we grew up with. Our little systems were overwhelmed all of the time, and it's become a habit and a pattern, and it's stuck. So moving through the overwhelm so you can really dig your feet in and get on with your soul's purpose and journey is so important. So check out my website and download the free gift.
I love it so much. Thank you so much, Scotti, for joining us on this episode of Pretty Smart Business. I can't wait to go get your free gift.
Thank you for
As-
having me. I enjoyed
amazing.
it so much.
Yes, awesome. Thank you again. And I can't wait to collaborate with you in the future.
Absolutely.